listening to Wake Up with Christopher DeSimone on the Live the Dream Media Network, Southern Arizona's premier live talk and online radio.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Live the Dream Media Network. Christopher DeSimone, Bev Showalter, and Facebook just Margot, which is absolutely the truth. Love Margot. And again, that's next Wednesday at the Marana Cemetery, Veteran Cemetery. This dedication of this paver project for all of our brothers locally here. So can't wait to see you at 2:00 next Wednesday. David Slavin and I. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Christopher.
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. We've done a musical interview series on this thing for this the Wake Up thing for years.
Going back about 10, 12. Well, you're coming up on 17, so actually we're going back about 15 years.
It's unbelievable. We're going on 17.
Pretty amazing.
We've done, of course, all of our progressive rock guys, which were
John Anderson, Steve Howe,
Greg Lake,
Trevor Rabin.
That's true. We've done Carl Palmer.
Jeff Emmerich. We were so fortunate to have Jeff Emmerich in the studio.
I have a picture of you and Jeff Emmerich someplace.
It's in the ether.
I got to remind you of that till we're both dead.
It is in the ether. But I had the pleasure of doing public relations for Jeff for the last 2 weeks of his life. And
Put that
sad,
on your LinkedIn.
But how many people, I was driving around with him in town thinking, I've got a room dedicated to the Beatles at my house.
Right.
And here I am driving Jeff Emmerich, the man that recorded and won the Grammy Awards for Abbey Road and Sgt. Pepper's.
Oh, we did. And then we just did Jimmy Webb and Alan Parsons in the last.
Just incredible. Cullen Blunstone of the Zombies.
He was great.
Tony Levin from King Crimson.
That was amazing, too. So,
we've had some great interviews.
So continuing our music
Chris
interview.
O'Dell, the Beatles insider.
That's true. And then I did, of course, Linda Ronstadt a few years ago.
Right.
So continuing the musical interview excellence series here, coming up at the University of Arizona Festival of Books this weekend. We have, tell me where we can find David Leaf before we get him on the air.
Well, David Leaf, being a Beach Boy fan for more than 5 decades.
You're a maniac.
Moody Blues and Beach Boys and Yes. And I had been following, and I read the book back in the late 1970s, the story of Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys, and the California Myth. And that was updated in the mid-1980s, but I missed that one. But as I got into the Beach Boys, and I joined the Beach Boys, even though I grew up with the Beach Boys music, I really didn't become a fan until I saw them without Brian Wilson at the Tucson Convention Center in 1975, and I was blown away and became a huge fan. In the late 80s, early 90s, I became aware of a long-lost album that wasn't completed by the Beach Boys called Smile.
Yeah.
Capital S, capital M, little I, capital L, capital E. And we heard the words that Brian Wilson was a genius, and that people just wanted him to complete that project, which the Beach Boys kind of ditched, and they did a modified lo-fi version of it, Smiley Smile, that was released in 1967, but really was a lo-fi, almost underproduced. I don't know any way of putting that. And but I read more and more about Smile, and everybody kept hoping that Brian would complete the project. And of course, David Leaf in his book, The Brian Wilson, The Beach Boys and the California Myth, talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
Well, in 2004, maybe 2001, Brian Wilson had reinvented himself and had gone out on tour. And I'm thinking, first off, it was something that I wanted to watch because Brian reinvented himself at the age of 56. And I knew that I would, after having watched peers of mine that were a little bit older, so maybe not exactly peers, but people that I had admired, and they were retiring at the age of 55. They'd sell their insurance book of business and go off and live on the high seas. And then at the age of 61, run out of money.
Right.
And have to come back and totally reinvent themselves. Well, I see Brian Wilson reinventing himself at the age of 56, and I thought, he's going to be my model because I'm going to have to do that. And sure enough, when I hit age 55 and was working at the Mountain Bell Yellow Pages, Dex Media, I retired and I had to reinvent myself. And coming in on these interviews with you is just all a part of that.
Yeah.
And anyway, in 2004, Brian Wilson completed Smile. And the album was called Brian Wilson Presents Smile. And when you read about it, you find out that David Leaf moved to LA to meet Brian Wilson, meet the Beach Boys, write about him. And he became Brian's best friend and encouraged Brian to complete the project.
Wow.
And when Brian passed away last year, David delivered the eulogy at his funeral. And I don't think there's any more fitting tribute to that. So when David released the book,
We should get this guy in the air soon. He's waiting for us.
let's get him on. Let's get him on right now.
Let's do it. Let's get him on. He's coming up at the University of Arizona Festival of Looks coming up. And his name is David Leaf. David Leaf, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. I want to hear all those interviews with John Anderson and Colin Blunstone and all those. You almost had Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Ola Yes. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
We miss Keith, and then the one that I always heard was I was going to interview John Wetton from King Crimson and UK and Asia, and we had a Canadian cell phone problem, and it never happened. So I cried. So.
Life is cruel. And Jimmy Webb?
Yes.
Jimmy Webb. David, we had the unique, living here in Tucson, Arizona. Jimmy was coming in last year and doing a concert at the Fox Theater downtown. And I knew of a link to Jimmy Webb in that his muse, Susie Horton Ronstadt, lives here in Tucson. And we had Jimmy live on video, like we're going to have you. Hopefully, I don't see you yet, but and we had Susie in the studio with us. Yeah. And so we did the interview with Jimmy, and he was talking about being a romantic, and then we brought Susie in on it, and it really was a fitting interview. And Jimmy Webb ended up sharing that.
I just want to let you know, David, none of your ex-girlfriends are sitting in the studio with us right now. Just want to let you know that nothing surprising like that's going to happen to you.
I'm trying to get my camera up, but it doesn't seem to be happening.
You sound great. Your sound is perfect right now. So, but so how did David Leaf you started in the 70s. How does David Leaf become so involved and fascinated and connected with the Beach Boys? Let's start with that, because David has your first book here.
Right. So I'm a fan of the Beach Boys in the 60s. I even saw them. My first rock concert was the Beach Boys.
Where was that?
It was at the Westchester County Center, just outside New York City. The Strawberry Alarm Clock and the Soul Survivors were the opening acts. And the Buffalo Springfield was supposed to be on the bill, but the day before, Bruce Palmer, their Canadian bass player, had been deported. So they dropped off the bill, which was terrible. But so I saw the Beach Boys. I wasn't, the Beatles were my musical gods in the 60s, like pretty much everybody else. So I'm in college in 1971, and I read an article in Rolling Stone about Brian Wilson and Smile. And my roommate and I in college go down this rabbit hole as well as you could in those days. And we're reading everything we could find, and we're listening to everything that had been released by the Beach Boys. And something strikes me as wrong. There's something wrong with this story. It just doesn't feel right. I'm a journalism major. I wanted to be Edward R. Murrow. And my roommate said, well, if this is bothering you so much, why don't you do something about it? and this is the era of student outrage. I went to school. My dorm was 5 blocks from the White House. We were getting tear gassed whether we wanted to or not. So finally, I formulated this notion. I said, I'm going to move to California, write a book about the Beach Boys, become Brian's friend, and help him finish Smile.
That's a hell of an agenda at that age.
It's certifiably insane. But it only took 33 years. So, but there were a lot of steps along the way, of course, all of which are discussed in the book that I'll be talking about at the festival, which is called Smile, the Rise, Fall, and Resurrection of Brian Wilson. Because Dave hit it right. Brian created a second act for himself as a solo artist that actually is worthy of him being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame uh, just by himself. It was an extraordinary comeback that required personal courage because Brian had been chased by demons his entire life. And in the book that Dave has there, that came out as an updated edition in 2022 called God Only Knows. And with an update that was more than half the length of the original book. So as a writer, I just, my fingers move quickly and I have a lot to say about this, my favorite subject.
So Brian's demons, I assume bad father. Where does Brian's demons come from? Where do they start?
Yeah, well, it's certainly a bad father, an incredibly abusive father. Um, as his brother Dennis said, I don't know any kids who got it like us. I mean, and Brian talks in the film I made, Beautiful Dreamer, Brian Wilson and the Story of Smile. If you watch that film, which you can see on YouTube, you'll hear him talk about it, and you'll hear him tell his story himself. And essentially, when he shelved Smile in 1967, he was on the creative role of a lifetime. He had made Pet Sounds in 1966, which did not make the record company happy. It did not make members of his group happy. He followed that with Good Vibrations. He was getting calls from Lennon and McCartney saying, "We love your album. We love what you're doing." And Paul even flew to Los Angeles and sat in on one of the Smile sessions. So there was a creative rivalry of sorts. Brian was the only one who was genuinely challenging them. In fact, Sir George Martin told me, he said that Pet Sounds was so influential on us that Sergeant Pepper was our attempt, accent on attempt, to equal Pet Sounds. That's how big a deal Brian was in 66. And a good portion of the music world was eagerly anticipating Smile in 67, but not his group and not the record company. And so he shelved it. And his heart was broken, his head was broken, and it took years and years for him to recover from that in terms of the demons. So there was his father, there was the intra-group struggles, there was the record company, and there was certainly drugs was an issue. And then his wife hired this weird doctor and gave him complete control over Brian. And then when that didn't work, the Beach Boys hired him for 9 years, as Brian describes it, 9 years in prison.
Wow.
So so when he emerges on the other side of all of this and gets married for the second time and begins a new life and a new career and starts touring as a solo artist and has a band of dedicated and incredibly talented musicians who are just dying to play the music of Pet Sounds and Smile, except Brian is like, don't even talk to me about that. It reminds me of a really bad time in my life. And so there's a whole bunch of moments along the way that lead to him finishing it. But one of the key moments was a show I produced for the old TNT network at Radio City Music Hall called An All-Star Tribute to Brian Wilson. And we had Paul Simon, Sir Elton John, David Crosby, Billy Joel, Sir George Martin, Ann and Nancy Wilson from Heart, Wilson Phillips reunited for the program, Jimmy Webb was there. I mean, it was really truly an all-star tribute. And about 3 months before the tribute, at a Christmas party at Scott Bennett's house, one of the band members, Brian and my late wife were sitting on the piano bench with their back to the piano. And Brian knew how much she loved Christmas. And he just kind of casually said to her, well, so what do you want for Christmas? I mean, she was really a Christmas nut, if you will. I mean, the tree didn't come down till Valentine's Day in our house.
I kind of want David Leaf.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I said my kind of woman. I appreciate Christmas. All right. So he asked her what she wants for Christmas. Sorry.
And she says for you to play Heroes and Villains, which was one of the centerpiece songs from Smile. And he goes, okay. And he turns around and plays it. Now, as you couldn't even talk to him about Heroes and Villains a month earlier. And now he's playing it. And when he finishes it, I say, well, you ought to do that at the tribute. And he goes, okay. So at the tribute, he performs a Smile song. Vince Gill, David Crosby, and Van Dyke Parks performed Surf's Up, which was the other major song from Smile. And the Boys Choir of Harlem performed Our Prayer, which is the opening piece of Smile. And not only does the world not come to an end, but they're all getting standing ovations for these performances because the audience who is there knows how big a deal it is that this Smile music is being played. And he started adding it to his touring set. And finally, in 2003, he said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to come back to England and next year, and we're going to do Brian Wilson Presents Smile.
And what a night that was. I wish I was there, but Paul McCartney was there, Roger Daltrey was there, Sir George Martin was there, and David Leaf was there.
So Pet Sounds, which a lot of people don't realize, if any musician of worth that I have respect for, when they say albums that, influence them or they admire, Pet Sounds comes out 9 out of 10 times.
Isn't it amazing how it has lived on and grown with people over the years and virtually not rejected, but it was considered a disappointment back in 1966 in the United States, not in England.
Right.
Correct. In England, what happened was Derek Taylor, who had been the Beatles publicist, had moved to Los Angeles, and Brian had hired him as the Beach Boys publicist. He was also working for the Byrds. So when in advance of Pet Sounds and as Pet Sounds is coming out, Derek is feeding all of his old British music paper contacts what's going on. And they embraced the album tremendous. For the British people, for whatever reason, Pet Sounds wasn't just a hit, but so there are all these music papers, New Musical Express and Melody Maker, and in a year-end poll, Pet Sounds was tied with Revolver for Album of the Year. That's how big a deal it was there. Here in America, Capitol Records pressed 300,000 copies. And 6 weeks later, after those copies had sold out, they released Best of the Beach Boys. So if you were a record buyer and you're the record store and you're flipping through the records, you see, oh, here's this Best of the Beach Boys. It's got Surfer Girl and In My Room, and I'm going to get this. So they essentially assassinated Pet Sounds. They made sure you couldn't buy it. It was out of print for decades, and so it was just heartbreaking for Brian in one sense. But the British response, helped make up for that. And then he followed Pet Sounds with Good Vibrations, which nobody could deny. That was an international #1 million selling single.
So where do we go? So you talk about this gap between him and the rest of the band. Right, and the idea, we have Wrecking Crew playing on the recordings. Talk about the beginning of the rift and how it continued, and kind of
Sure.
part of the nightmare for Brian.
So in 1965, Brian retired from touring because he wanted to focus on the music. He's a good year and a half ahead of the Beatles, who in the summer of '66, after their Candlestick Park tour, say, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to go focus on the records. And of course, to our great advantage, that's when we get Sgt. Pepper. So Brian in 65 starts making albums that are as much about his emotions as they are about anything else. He's abandoned the sun, the surf, the sand, all of the formula hits, if you will, that had the Beach Boys as America's number one band for a few years. And they put out an album called The Beach Boys Today that, in a sense, is almost a prequel to Pet Sounds. Anyway, by the end of 65, he's already done another album, Summer Days and Summer Nights, and the record company is calling for another record this year. Brian doesn't want to do a fast record. He needs time to do Pet Sounds, which he's begun working on. So they do a thing called Beach Boys Party, just to give him the time and space to work on Pet Sounds. Beach Boys Party yields the big hit Barbara Ann. But Brian isn't interested in retreading anything. He wants to travel new territory, and so he engages a new songwriting partner, a lyricist named Tony Escher, and together they write "Wouldn't It Be Nice" and "God Only Knows" and "I Just Wasn't Made for These Times." So Pet Sounds lyrically, I think of as Brian's emotional autobiography. He's telling the world how he's feeling about the life. At the same time, he's using these incredible studio musicians, Hal Blaine and Carol Kay and Don Randy, sometimes as many as a dozen players in one, so maybe a string section as well, to create music. He's composed these very complex songs, which don't necessarily sound like the Beach Boys. So he's doing this while the Beach Boys are on tour, and when they come back from their tour of Japan, they go, wait a second, what's this? And they kind of grudgingly get back to work. Now, Brian's brothers, Carl and Dennis, were behind him 100%. So really, Mike Love is the one who does not fully support what's going on. But ultimately, it doesn't matter, because Brian has taken over this album. There are two tracks where he's singing solo with no background vocals. There's two instrumental tracks. The first song that's finished from the album, "Caroline No," Capitol Records releases it as a Brian Wilson solo single, which was just a radical move. So the Beach Boys are like, well, wait a second, is he leaving the group? So there's all this. He's made them millionaires, he's made them world famous, and now wait a second, is he going out on his own? So there's a lot of these kids are so young. Yeah. I mean, Dennis and Carl were both in high school when the Beach Boys started, so they don't have the experience or the wisdom to understand that Brian just needs this creative space, but he's taking it. And so the success of the album in England is helps push him forward in this new direction. Good Vibrations is the first thing, and then Smile is the grand rock opera, as he referred to it later. He called it at the time a teenage symphony to God.
Interesting.
He was going to make a spiritual album. It opens with a track called "Our Prayer," which is just the Beach Boys singing a cappella. So there are these amazing melodies, very, very sophisticated jazz influenced melodies. The instrumentation. Brian had the ability to combine multiple instruments to create a new sound. So he could take a piano and a guitar and combine them in a way that, wait a second, what is that? I've never heard that sound before. Well, you haven't, because it doesn't exist. And so he's done all of this, and now he's waiting for the Beach Boys to come back from their tour of England, because he needs their voices on the album. And as he told me in the movie Beautiful Dreamer, he said, I could do all the voices myself, but I wanted that Beach Boys blend.
Yeah, because I mean, in the end, he's literally telling these guys, I'm going to do these albums, but is it the idea that they just weren't good enough of musicians to do what he wanted to do, and that's why he went the Wrecking Crew way?
Well, they certainly weren't good enough musicians. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no question about that. I mean, they were more than adequate to go on the road and play the hits because they could sing, and that's really what people wanted. People wanted to hear. They wanted to hear those songs sung beautifully, and they did that. But in terms of in the studio, first of all, Brian was an incredibly impatient person. So if they were on the road, he just couldn't wait. So and sometimes he would go in and actually sing all the parts himself and do what was called ping ponging with the tracks because they didn't have 16 track studios in those days.
Right.
But he had 2 4 tracks at his home where he was experimenting with how to do all of this. And the late David Crosby tells amazing stories in the book about how he would go up to Brian's house because he wanted to know what was coming next from Brian so that the birds wouldn't be left in the dust. I mean, this is a guy who was enormously influential.
I'm going to interject something here. Chris, this is why I've always thought that Good Vibrations was really the start of the progressive rock revolution that you and I are so enthralled with.
Right.
And David, I'll add while I'm speaking right here, I mentioned that to John Anderson when we interviewed John. I said, "Were you guys influenced by Good Vibrations?" And surprisingly, John Anderson answered, "No, we were into the Fifth Dimension Paper Cup, which was Jimmy
Yeah.
Webb."
Yeah.
And so I mentioned this story when we interviewed Jimmy Webb. We had the opportunity to talk to him about it, of how influential he ended up really being in the evolution of Yes.
It all comes together,
That,
baby.
that's amazing. I mean, look, these people are listening to everything. They're taking it all in, and it's kind of getting scrambled up in their brains, and they're coming out with something new, which is why the '70s was filled with all of these great bands. I mean, I had at least the first 5 Yes albums I know in my college dorm, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and King Crimson. I mean, it was I'm a melody person.
Don't leave out the Moody Blues.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm going to see Justin at the end of the month.
Hey, hold on for 2 seconds, Dave. We got to go visit some sponsors. David Slavin, tell us where we can find this young man at the book festival, and then we'll go to break.
Okay.
And then we'll bring him back for one more segment.
David Leaf is going to be at 4 panels at the Festival of Books
What a
this
maniac.
weekend at the
4
University of
panels.
Arizona. First off, on Saturday morning at 11:30 till 12:30, David will be at the Integrated Learning Center, room 150. That's the little lower level in the middle of the mall
Oh, yeah.
at the U of A. He'll be on a panel with Bruce Handy and Tiffany Moon. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, David will be at the U of A campus store stage from 4 to 5 with the panelists Kirk Ellis and Todd Purdom. The moderator there is Jeff Yonk from the Loft. So that's kind of interesting there. And then on Sunday, David will be talking about the Lost album and the legendary sound of the Beach Boys in the Student Union Sabino room from 10 to 11 a.m. And that'll be moderated by my good friend Dave Silver, who used to be the sports director at K-Gun TV for 29 years. And then also on Sunday from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m., David will be with Jeff Perlman at the Koffler room 218 of the Student Union.
They should call this the David Leaf Festival. The guy's
It
all
is.
over the place.
It is.
So, all right, hold on. We'll be right back with David Leaf. If you have any questions, hit us in the live chat. You can hit me at chris@ltdmedia.net. Ron Arenas and Will are coming up on Southwest Flavor in 27 minutes. They got Tom Murphy from the great town of Sahuarita, and then Trish Muir talking about the big St. Patrick's Day Festival coming up this weekend somewhere in this town. You're on the Live the Dream Media Network.
This is Wake Up with Chris DeSimone, only on the Live the Dream Media Network. Now, a word from our sponsors.
Looking for the best outdoor patio in Tucson? Look no further than St. Philip's Plaza at the southeast corner of River and Campbell, where you can sip on Tucson's finest collection of whiskey at Union Public House, brunch 7 days a week at Reforma Modern Mexican Mezcal and Tequila, and experience our newest restaurant, Proof, proudly serving house-made pasta and artisanal pizza. Enjoy live music and dine under the stars with Union, Reforma, and Proof. Join us at St. Philip's Plaza.
Hello, I'm Kari Gallardo with Southern Arizona Cleaning and Supply, proudly locally owned and operated right here in Southern Arizona. We specialize in paper consumables, janitorial supplies, and facility maintenance products for businesses of every size. Our commitment is simple: quality products, dependable service, and genuine local care. Southern Arizona Cleaning and Supply, your trusted partner in cleanliness and efficiency. 1801 South Alvernon, Suite 104, southernazclean.com, 520-495-4097.
Tired of the big box gym? Welcome to Tucson Strength, Southern Arizona's premier strength facility. I have handpicked world-class equipment you won't find anywhere else. From the newest innovations to the most iconic pieces ever made. From beginner to advanced athlete, we say, welcome home. No riffraff or gimmicks, just a focused training environment built for people that train seriously.
For over a century, radio has changed and impacted the lives of everyone, becoming one of the major foundations of communication, keeping us up to date in news and broadcasting, and providing daily music that we love. Radio evolves more as the years progress and time moves forward, and it is only becoming better. Live the Dream Media is proud to be part of that history, stepping into the evolution of online radio to make it more advanced than ever before. Introducing the Live the Dream Media app, your #1 online radio experience. Catch your favorite music 24/7 and tune into live podcasts, or catch up on your own time with our on-demand library. And you can also check out our integrated merch store built right into the app. No matter where you travel in the world, the dream stays with you. You can be anywhere on the planet and stay connected. Download the Live the Dream Media app for free today on the Apple App Store and Google Play, and experience radio reimagined.
Looking for the best outdoor patio in Tucson? Look no further than St. Philip's Plaza at the southeast corner of River and Campbell, where you can sip on Tucson's finest collection of whiskey at Union Public House, brunch 7 days a week at Reforma Modern Mexican Mezcal and Tequila, and experience our newest restaurant, Proof, proudly serving house-made pasta and artisanal pizza. Enjoy live music and dine under the stars with Union, Reforma, and Proof. Join us at St. Philip's Plaza.
My heat and air were in a state of disrepair.
Spring is in the air and our warm temperatures are about to turn hot. Now is the time to take advantage of pre-summer savings before the hot summer weather. Picturock's Cooling, Heating, and Plumbing is offering 5-year, no-interest financing on the installation of green HVAC systems, OAC. Call now for your free estimate, 520-492-0748, or make your appointment online at picturockscooling.com.
Picture Rocks Cooling, Heating, and Plumbing.
Hi, this is Sean McCluskey, co-owner and designated broker for Rincon Ventures. If you're a rental owner by choice or by accident and you're looking to hire or change property management companies, consider Rincon Ventures. We employ an aggressive web-based advertising strategy to market your rental. We thoroughly screen prospective tenants and conduct routine property inspections. Our online system gives tenants the ability to pay rent and file maintenance requests instantly over the web. Our owners can use the same system to instantly check on their properties. Call Rincon Ventures at 881-2258 or visit us on the web at rvprop.com.
I don't remember much about being in foster care, but I do remember my house parents. They adopted me and my sister and 2 other kids in the home. And now, 21 years later, I am married and we're actually house parents, and it has been such an amazing experience. I think it really helps because I can connect with the kids on a deeper level because I've been where they're at.
Your foster care tax credit donation makes all of this possible. Give today by visiting gaptaxcredit.com.
Hey, you found us on your feed. Are you wondering what Live the Dream Media does? I'm going to explain it to you. Let's go. First and foremost, Live the Dream Media is a premier digital advertising and marketing agency, but that's not all we do. We have also become one of the largest live streaming podcast platforms in the region, with our own online radio station and more on the way. Here's the coolest part. Right now, I'm standing in Studio B, where we are getting ready to put together an awesome state-of-the-art studio to continue the growth of this platform. One of the coolest things about Live the Dream Media is we take pride in being flexible. We enjoy the ability to make changes on the fly. If Live the Dream Media is a company you feel interested in working with and want to enjoy the flexibility and all we have to offer with our new podcasting network and our digital advertising abilities, reach out to us at contact@ltdmedia.net. Visit our website, livethedreammedia.com, or check us out on social media.
Welcome to Giuseppe's Ristorante Italiano, Tucson's go-to spot for fresh homemade Italian food. From cozy dinners with friends to laid-back family nights, we've got it all. Everything's made daily with top-quality ingredients, and our 2 locations make it easy to drop in or pick up. Whether you're into comfort classics or something bold, you'll feel right at home here, just like you're part of the family. 2 locations, Oracle and Rudisill, and 22nd and Harrison. Preview the menu at giuseppesristorante.com. Hey everybody, it's Chris.
Hey, it's David Samarano.
Hey guys, it's Clint Peak over here.
Hi, I'm Blair Lametti Mathias.
And I'm Summer Smeaton.
Hey, I'm Ron Arenas.
And I'm Will Pena.
Hey guys, I'm Mike Curry.
And I'm Mike Bader.
Hi there, I'm Bruce Ash.
Hi, Ed Wilkinson here.
Hi, this is Bob Elliott.
We are Live the Dream Media. Watch and listen to all of our shows Monday through Friday, only on the Live the Dream Media Network.
It's more of Wake Up with Chris DeSimone on the Live the Dream Media Network. Now, back to the show.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Live the Dream Media Network. Christopher DeSimone, David Slavin. One more segment of semi-award-winning broadcasting here before we get to Ron and Southwest Flavor. And we're happy to have back David Leaf, author. He's basically doing a session from what David read every other hour at the Festival of Books this weekend.
It seems that way, doesn't it? So
David's like, if I'm going to do a book festival, we ain't half-assing it. We're doing a book festival.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. 125,000 people out there, including David Leaf, both days.
Wow.
So, hey, David, I got a question for you. Those of us that are Beach Boy fans all have heard the story of Brian Wilson lying in bed. And Saturday Night Live even did their fantastic segment with him with Dan Aykroyd and Belushi, where they tried to get Brian on a surfboard. Did that really happen like that?
Well, that was a TV special. So if you're talking about Saturday night,
that's right. It was a TV special. That's right.
It was produced by Lorne Michaels, and it was designed to capitalize, no pun intended, on Brian's reputation for having spent his years and years in bed. Ironically, there's a lot of truth to it, but only in 74 and 75. Prior to that, if you had gone to Brian's house at 10 o'clock in the morning and said, "Where's Brian?" the answer would have been, "He's in bed." But that would have been because he had kind of crawled home at 7 o'clock in the morning. He had spent the night at Danny Hutton's house. Danny Hutton is his greatest friend and one of the creators of Three Dog Night. And so he would have been up all night. So sure, he was in bed. But everyone bought into this notion that Brian, spent years and years in bed, including me. And when I moved to California in late 75, I was at the local YMCA playing basketball, shooting hoops with a friend of mine from college. And onto the court walked 2 guys and say, "Do you want to play 2-on-2?" One of them was Stan Love, the brother of Mike Love, who had just retired from his NBA career. And the other one was Brian Wilson.
Interesting.
And it was like some strange apparition. Wait a second, you're supposed to be in bed.
Right.
But no, he wasn't. But he wasn't. And I don't know how long the game lasted, but I do know a couple of things. One is he played no defense whatsoever. He was all offense. All offense. He got the ball, he shot it. When it was, so we were playing 2-on-1 basically against Stan Love, but Stan Love was so big it was hard to get a shot, shot that wasn't blocked. The other thing that I remember really clearly was how are my friends, this is long before the era of cell phones. What are my friends back east going to say when I tell them this story? Who's going to believe that I was, I met Brian shooting baskets? I mean, it's just,
Wow.
it seemed so improbable. It was the spring of 1976, and he had not been seen in public. I mean, this is a guy who just, was not around. And so, that's the first time I met him. Although, I certainly didn't say, "Hey, Brian, what happened to Smile?"
Well, I mean, that
that-
means you were on the right path of what you were trying to search and discover for. That magically shows up on the hoop.
Yeah, there was a lot of, to use a Police album title, synchronicity. When I moved to LA, I got here on a Saturday night in the fall of '75. And the following Monday, I went to the California State Unemployment Office to transfer my claim from New York to LA. It was $95 a week, which you could actually live on here at that time. Anyway, walking out of the unemployment office, I was walking north on across Broadway, Fifth Street, and walking towards me was Dennis Wilson.
Interesting.
And I was not a shy person. You can't be shy to do the kind of stuff that I did. And I walked up to him and said, "Hi, Dennis. My name is David Leaf. I just moved to California to write a book about your brother Brian." And I think I can still hear the echo of his laughter at that notion. And he just said, "Good luck." And that was the fall of '75. In the fall of '78, the first book came out, The Beach Boys and the California Myth. Now, in neither case did my meeting Dennis on the sidewalk or Brian at the YMCA help me at all in terms of getting interviews or anything like that. But it clearly told me that I was in the right place. If I was going to do a book on the Beach Boys, I had moved to the right spot.
One of the listeners has hit me in the live chat on Facebook. She wants to know what your take is on the Love and Mercy movie that Bill Paula did with Dano and Giamatti.
Sure. Actually, I was attached to that movie for almost 15 years.
Wow.
And so my only two kind of gripes with the movie, if you will,
Yep.
is, and this will sound strange to people who know how abused Brian was, but I felt that they needed to show that Brian's father and his family provided him the tools he needed to become Brian Wilson. And by that, I mean, in just a 45-second montage, we should have seen the Saturday night sing-alongs with the parents, Mother and Audrey and Brian and Carl, singing old standards. We should have seen Murray turning the garage into a music room for Brian. We should have seen Murray buy him a reel-to-reel tape recorder. We could have seen Murray take Brian to see the Hilos and the four freshmen who were his absolute heroes. And so just in that period of time, we could have said, okay, Murray was a horrible father, but he recognized his son's gift and he supported that gift. And I think that was missing. The other thing that really bugged me is they portrayed Van Dyke Parks in just one brief scene as kind of a stoned hippie who, had nothing musical to contribute. Van Dyke Parks is an extraordinarily talented songwriter, arranger. He was the one at the Good Vibrations sessions who had said, Brian, tell the cellos to arc their bows to get the sound you want. That's what you need. I mean, he was musically educated.
Right.
And one of Brian's great albums in his second act was a Van Dyke Parks record called Orange Crate Art, in which Brian sang almost all the vocals. So I think he got short shrift. The other thing was Melinda had asked my at the time my wife and I to be characters in the movie, because the three of us had been the ones who were working to free Brian from the Mad Doctor. And at the time, my wife was very sick, and we just didn't have the time to devote to that kind of a thing. So it was. Otherwise, I thought it was a pretty good movie. I didn't understand why they needed two different actors to portray Brian. It would have been nice to have just one person, because it's kind of disconcerting to me as a viewer to see two completely looking different people.
Yeah, just have Paul Dano play both, right? At that point.
Right.
That would have been great. I would have been very, very happy with that. But otherwise, I think it's a good story. I don't think as a film it's as as good as Beautiful Dreamer in terms of telling Brian's story. I think that's the best one to watch if you want to get a sense of him telling his own story as opposed to it being created in a narrative scripted way.
David, we're starting to run out of time. So what's burning on your brain for Mr. Leaf?
Well, there's a lot of Beach Boy reissues that happen over the years. They constantly recycle it, and one came out just about 3-4 weeks ago called "We Got a Groove." It's the story of the Beach Boys music from the Beach Boys "Love You," a little bit of 15 Big Ones, and most of what was an intended album called Adult Child, and some alternate takes and stuff like that. David, were you involved with that reissue?
I wasn't. I was around when all that stuff was happening. It was just after I moved to California, and I remember one of the people who worked at the studio giving me a cassette of the Adult Child album, which was never released. And so in 1993, when I was one of the producers of the Good Vibrations box set, which was the first giant reissue of Beach Boys music, I knew to include two songs from that, two beautiful ballads, Still I Dream of It and It's Over Now. And on that Good Vibrations box set, because I was Brian's friend, I could go to him and say, "Hey, Brian, here's the track listing, but there's something missing." And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, there's this hole in your career. We go from the Good Vibrations single to the Heroes and Villains single, but in between you had worked for almost 8 months on the Smile Sessions. We need to include some music from this." And he said, "Okay, what do you have in mind?" And I reeled off a bunch of titles, and he said, "Okay." And I realized he said okay because I wasn't telling him it had to be done. I was asking him as the guy who had created this music, and I was just saying, Brian, this to give the listener a full picture of what happened. We need that music, and the Good Vibrations box set went on to be a gigantic success. It got a gold record, which for box sets is pretty unusual, and because of its success. We came up with something called the Pet Sound Sessions, which I remember when I was working on that with Brian, and I told him what I thought would be a good way to show off the album and his work on it. I said, "Let's hear the album in mono, let's hear it in stereo, let's hear the tracks without the vocals, let's hear the vocals without the tracks." And he said, "People really want to hear that?" I said, "Yeah, people want to hear that." And he said, "Okay." And it was nominated for a Grammy for best long form recording. So that was my involvement with the box sets. We Got a Groove is really, I think, for serious hardcore, as I would call them, beach nuts, of which I'm one of them.
And people like me. Although I feel like there's stuff that's missing there. I thought they could have done the Adult Child just a little bit further, as well as more of 15 Big Ones. You mentioned that the Beach Boys box set back in '93 went gold. How many copies of Brian Wilson Presents Smile were actually sold?
Brian Wilson Presents Smile sold 800,000 copies.
Did it go gold?
Which
I mean, that's enough for it, but
it was 800,000 copies worldwide. I did get I'm looking at my wall. I got a copy from a gold record from England for the sale of 100,000 copies in the UK, but it was worldwide. It was 800,000 copies, but it didn't for whatever reason it didn't hit the 500,000 mark in the States, or at least accounting wise. We always have to remember we're in the music business.
So my last question before we got to let you go is, as a guy who's part of the crew that's in the know about the genius of Brian Wilson, is there a frustration that they don't really know about, the average bear doesn't really understand or know about the genius of Brian Wilson, and Beach Boys is always just, they're going to hear Surfin' USA in their head? Is there a frustration still?
An enormous frustration. I mean, it's one of the things that has driven my life and my work. I remember somebody once asked me, why did you write the Beach Boys and the California Myth? What were you thinking? And I said, I want to grab the world by the shoulders and kind of shake them and say, do you realize how important this guy is and how badly he's being treated? And fortunately, it helped a little, but he still had to go through the weird doctor and all the other things. People just always felt they knew what was best for Brian Wilson, as opposed to just letting him do it. I mean, this is a guy who created all that great music. He knew what was best, and it was frustrating to watch. In terms of the world, I feel like I'm doing my work for the future, for 50, 100, 200 years from now, so that when people are studying Brian music as classical music of the 20th century, these living histories will exist, so they can go, oh, this is what was really happening at the time. They won't have to guess, because obviously we don't have this on Mozart and Beethoven and Chopin, etc.
Well, again, I could talk to you for another hour, but we got to get going. So great job, David Leaf. Have an amazing Festival of Books this weekend, and hopefully we can do it again one day.
Any time.
Thank you, David.
As you can hear, I can't stop talking about the subject.
Thank you, David. I look forward to seeing you this weekend.
I will see you. Look forward to it, David.
There it is, David Leaf.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, my friend. It was good talking to you today. So, David, thanks for bringing this together. Very
Thank you,
wonderful.
Chris.
Had a great time with it. It was a rocking and rolling show. Schweikert was spicy, and Margot was great as always. And finishing off with David was perfect. So, thank you, babe.
Great. Happy March.
Happy March to you. Coming up, Southwest Flavor. We have Sahuarita Mayor Tom Murphy plus Trish from the St. Patrick's Day festivities. And then tomorrow, McCluskey, John Brakey, Audit USA, talking about the breakdown of the RTA next vote, Joey and Celeste, and there's someone else in between there. It'll come back to me before it's over. All right, you're on the Live the Dream Media Network. We'll see you tomorrow morning.